I thought I knew what betrayal felt like. I thought I'd already survived the worst kind of pain a marriage could inflict. But on a Tuesday night in October, when my husband's phone rang on our kitchen counter and I picked it up expecting a work emergency, I learned that some betrayals don't just break you, they erase everything you thought was real. If you're watching this from somewhere in the world where you still believe in happy endings, drop a comment and let me know where you're from. Because I used to live in that same place, and I want to remember what hope looked like. And please, if you've ever felt like your whole life was built on lies, check the description box below. There are more stories like mine there. Stories about survival, about the moment everything changes, about what happens when the people you trust most become strangers wearing familiar faces. My name is Lauren. I'm 43 years old. I live in a suburb outside Charlotte, North Carolina, in a house with white shutters and a front porch swing that my husband, Marcus, built with his own hands 7 years ago. We have 2 kids, Ethan, who's 19 and away at college in Raleigh, and Sophie, who's 16, and whose entire world revolves around her phone and her best friend Ava. From the outside, we look like the kind of family you'd see in a home goods commercial, laughing over pancakes, holding hands during evening walks, kissing in the kitchen while dinner simmered on the stove. But that's the thing about facades. They only work until someone looks too close. Marcus was a regional sales manager for a pharmaceutical company. He traveled often, sometimes 2 or 3 times a month, to conferences, client meetings, training seminars. I didn't question it. Why would I? We'd been married for 21 years. We'd survived his father's death, my mother's battle with cancer, Sophie's terrifying bout with pneumonia when she was 8. We weren't perfect, but we were solid. Or at least I thought we were. The cracks started small. A text message that made him smile in a way I hadn't seen in years. A new cologne that smelled expensive and unfamiliar. He started going to the gym at odd hours, 6 in the morning, 10 at night, and coming home with this glow, this energy that he never seemed to direct at me anymore. When I asked him about it, he'd kiss my forehead and say something about finally taking his health seriously, about wanting to be around for our grandkids someday. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly. But then came the phone calls, always when I wasn't around, always followed by him stepping outside or disappearing into his office. And when I'd walk into a room, he'd end the call quickly, too quickly, with some excuse about a difficult client or a vendor issue. I started paying attention to the little things. The way he angled his phone away from me when he typed. The way he'd changed his passcode, something he'd never done in all our years together. The way he'd started wearing his wedding ring on a chain around his neck instead of on his finger, claiming it had gotten too tight and he needed to get it resized. If you've ever felt that gnawing suspicion in your gut, that whisper that tells you something's wrong even when you can't prove it, then you know how it feels to live in that space between knowing and not wanting to know. It's like standing at the edge of a cliff, and part of you wants to step back to safety, but another part of you knows you're already falling. 3 weeks before the phone call that changed everything, I found a receipt in Marcus's gym bag. It was from a restaurant in Asheville, a place called the Veranda, one of those upscale spots with white tablecloths and $20 cocktails. 2 entrees, a bottle of wine, dessert. The total was over $200. Marcus had told me he was in Asheville for a training conference that weekend, that he'd barely had time to eat between sessions, that he'd grabbed fast food and worked in his hotel room most of the time. I confronted him that night. I put the receipt on the table between us while we ate leftover chicken casserole in silence. He glanced at it, barely flinched, and then looked at me with those steady brown eyes that I'd fallen in love with when I was 22 years old. "Lauren, come on," he said, his voice so calm it made me feel crazy. That was a client dinner. Jeff Morrison and his wife were in town. I took them out. I submitted it for reimbursement. You can check the company records if you want. He sounded so reasonable, so rational, and I wanted to believe him. I wanted it so much that I convinced myself I was being paranoid, that marriage required trust, that I was letting my insecurities poison something good. So I let it go. But the truth doesn't disappear just because you refuse to look at it. It waits. It grows. And eventually, it shows up in ways you can't ignore. That Tuesday in October, Marcus had come home from work around 6:30, the same as always. He kissed me on the cheek, asked what was for dinner, played with our dog, Bailey, in the backyard while I finished cooking. Sophie was upstairs on a video call with Ava, planning some outfit for homecoming. Everything felt normal, routine, safe. After dinner, Marcus went to take a shower. He left his phone on the kitchen counter, face down next to the fruit bowl. I was loading the dishwasher, my hands covered in soap suds, when it started ringing. The screen lit up, vibrating against the granite, and I glanced over, expecting to see a name I recognized. A coworker. His brother. Maybe his mom. But the screen just said unknown. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and picked up the phone. Marcus had been getting a lot of spam calls lately, and I figured I'd just decline it. But something made me pause. Some instinct. Some whisper in the back of my mind that told me to answer. So I did. I pressed the green button and lifted the phone to my ear, ready to hang up on a robocall or a telemarketer. But instead, I heard breathing. Soft. Deliberate. And then a woman's voice, low and urgent, whispered 6 words that stopped my heart. Let's get rid of her tonight. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. My entire body went cold, like someone had dumped ice water over my head. I stood there in my kitchen, dish towel still in my hand, phone pressed to my ear, and I didn't breathe. I didn't move. I just listened. There was a pause. Then the voice came again, quieter this time, almost nervous. Marcus? Are you there? And that's when I recognized it. The voice didn't belong to a stranger. It didn't belong to some anonymous mistress I could hate from a distance, some faceless woman I could imagine and despise without ever really knowing. It belonged to someone I knew, someone I trusted, someone who'd sat at my kitchen table and eaten my food and hugged me and told me she loved me. It was Ava's mother. It was my daughter's best friend's mother. It was Diane. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you considered family, you know that it's not just the betrayal itself that destroys you. It's the realization that every moment you shared with them was a performance. Every smile was a lie. Every hug was a calculation. And you start wondering how long they were laughing at you behind your back. Diane Crawford, 41 years old. Blonde hair always styled in those loose beach waves that looked effortless but probably took an hour. She wore Lululemon leggings and oversized sweaters and always had a Starbucks cup in her hand. She ran a small interior design business from home, something she'd started after her divorce 3 years ago. She was funny, warm, the kind of person who remembered your birthday and brought wine when she came over and sent you motivational quotes when you were having a bad day. She was my friend. Our daughters had been inseparable since middle school. Sleepovers every weekend, joint family dinners, weekend trips to the lake. Diane and I had spent countless hours together, talking about our kids, our jobs, our dreams, our frustrations. She'd cried on my shoulder when her ex-husband, Rick, left her for a woman half his age. I'd held her hand through the divorce, helped her pack up her old house, listened to her vent about custody battles and lawyer fees and the loneliness of starting over. And the entire time, she was sleeping with my husband. I didn't hang up the phone. I stood there, frozen, my hand trembling so badly I almost dropped it. On the other end, I could hear Diane's breathing getting faster, more panicked. Marcus, she said again, her voice tight. Say something. I wanted to scream. I wanted to say something vicious, something that would hurt her the way she'd just hurt me. But I didn't. Instead, I very carefully, very quietly ended the call and set the phone back down on the counter. My legs felt like they were going to give out. I gripped the edge of the counter and forced myself to breathe. In, out, in, out. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what I'd just heard, trying to fit the pieces together in a way that didn't destroy me. Let's get rid of her tonight. What did that mean? Get rid of me? As in kill me? Divorce me? Ruin me? I heard the shower turn off upstairs. Marcus would be down any minute, and I had no idea what to do. I couldn't confront him, not yet. Not until I understood what I was dealing with. So I did the only thing I could think of. I picked up his phone again, my hand shaking, and I opened his messages. He had Face ID enabled, but I'd watched him unlock it 1,000 times. I held the phone up to my face, angled just right, and somehow, maybe out of sheer luck or muscle memory, it unlocked. And that's when I saw everything. There were messages between him and Diane going back 8 months. 8 months! Almost a full year. At first, they were innocent enough, coordinating drop-offs for the girls, making plans for group dinners. But then, around March, the tone shifted. Inside jokes, compliments, late-night texts that had nothing to do with our daughters. By April, they weren't even pretending anymore. I scrolled through message after message, each one more explicit, more intimate, more devastating than the last. Photos, videos, conversations about hotel rooms and secret meetups, and how much they missed each other. And then, near the bottom, I found a thread from just 2 days ago. Diane, *, we can't keep doing this. She's going to find out, *. Marcus, *, she won't. She doesn't pay attention, *. Diane, *, what if she does? What if she already knows, *. Marcus, *, then we deal with it. We've talked about this, *. Diane, *, I'm serious, Marcus. We need a plan, *. Marcus, *, I know. Soon. I promise, *. I felt like I was going to vomit. My husband, the man I built a life with, the father of my children, was planning something with the woman I'd considered one of my closest friends. And I had no idea how deep it went. I heard footsteps on the stairs. I quickly closed the messages, locked the phone, and set it back down on the counter just as Marcus walked into the kitchen. He was wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair still damp from the shower, and he smiled at me like everything was normal. "Hey, babe," he said, picking up his phone and glancing at the screen. "Did someone call?" I forced myself to meet his eyes, to smile, to lie. "Yeah," I said, my voice steady even though my heart was pounding. "Unknown number." I didn't answer. He nodded, slipping the phone into his pocket. "Probably spam." "You okay? You look pale." "I'm fine," I said. "Just tired." He kissed the top of my head and grabbed a beer from the fridge, and I watched him walk into the living room and turn on the TV like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just been plotting my destruction with the woman who used to be my friend. And in that moment, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront him. I wasn't going to cry, or beg, or demand answers. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. I was going to find out exactly what they were planning. And then I was going to destroy them both. If you've ever had to smile at someone who's betraying you, if you've ever had to pretend everything's fine while your world is falling apart, then hit that subscribe button. Because you're going to want to see how this ends. And please, check the description box below for more stories like this. Stories about women who refused to be victims, who fought back, who reclaimed their power when everything was taken from them. I spent the rest of that night acting like the perfect wife. I curled up next to Marcus on the couch. I laughed at his jokes. I let him hold my hand. And the entire time I was planning, calculating, figuring out my next move. Because if they wanted to get rid of me, they were going to learn that I wasn't going anywhere. Not without a fight. The next morning, I woke up before Marcus. The sun hadn't even risen yet, and the house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator downstairs and the soft sound of Bailey snoring at the foot of our bed. Marcus was lying on his side, facing away from me, his breathing deep and even. I stared at the back of his head and felt nothing. No love, no anger, just a cold, sharp clarity that I'd never experienced before. I slipped out of bed and went downstairs. I made coffee. I sat at the kitchen table in the dark, and I thought about what I'd heard, what I'd seen, and I started making a list. I needed evidence. Real, concrete evidence that would hold up if this turned into a legal battle. I needed to know exactly what they were planning, and I needed to do it without tipping them off. The first thing I did was check our bank accounts. I logged into our joint checking and savings on my laptop, scrolling through months of transactions, looking for anything unusual. And I found it. Small withdrawals, mostly $50 here, $100 there. Always in cash. Always from ATMs in parts of town Marcus had no reason to be in. Over the past 8 months, he'd taken out nearly $12,000 in cash, and I had no idea where it had gone. I checked our credit cards next. There were charges I didn't recognize. Hotels in Asheville, Greensboro, Winston-Salem. Restaurants. Jewelry stores. A charge for $600 at a boutique I'd never heard of. He'd been careful, spacing them out, keeping most of them under his business expense account, so I wouldn't notice. But now that I was looking, really looking, it was all there. He'd been planning this for months. Maybe longer. I printed out everything. Bank statements. Credit card bills. I saved screenshots of his text messages with Diane, backing them up to a cloud account he didn't have access to. I forwarded key emails to an address I'd created just for this purpose. I moved methodically, carefully, making sure I didn't leave any trace that I'd been snooping. By the time Marcus came downstairs, I had a file folder hidden in my car with enough evidence to bury him. "Morning," he said, kissing me on the cheek as he poured himself coffee. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," I said, which was true. He sat down across from me, scrolling through his phone, and I watched him. Really watched him, trying to see the man I'd married underneath the stranger he'd become. But I couldn't find him. He was gone. Or maybe he'd never been there at all. "I have a conference in Atlanta this weekend," he said, not looking up. "Leaving Friday morning, back Sunday night." My stomach twisted. "Another conference?" "Yeah, big one. Probably going to be pretty boring, but it's mandatory." I nodded, smiled. "Okay, I'll miss you." He glanced up, surprised. "Really?" "Of course," I said. "We barely see each other anymore." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I know. I'm sorry. Things have been crazy at work. But after this trip, I'll take some time off. Maybe we can go somewhere. Just the two of us." I wanted to throw my coffee in his face, but instead, I squeezed his hand back and said, "I'd like that." As soon as he left for work, I called in sick. I told my boss I had a migraine, which wasn't entirely a lie. My head was pounding from lack of sleep and adrenaline. Then I got in my car and I drove to Diane's house. I'm not sure what I was expecting to find. Maybe nothing. Maybe I just needed to see her, to look her in the eye and confirm that the person I trusted was really capable of this. But when I pulled up to her house, a small craftsman-style bungalow with a perfectly manicured lawn, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Marcus's car was in her driveway. He was supposed to be at work. He'd left our house an hour ago in his suit and tie, coffee travel mug in hand, talking about back-to-back meetings and client calls. But he wasn't at work. He was here, with her. I parked down the street where they couldn't see me, and I waited. 20 minutes passed, then 30, and then the front door opened and Marcus stepped out, adjusting his tie, looking relaxed and happy in a way I hadn't seen in years. Diane followed him, wearing a silk robe, her hair messy, and she wrapped her arms around him and kissed him. Not a quick peck. A real kiss. The kind of kiss that told me everything I needed to know. I took out my phone and I recorded it. Every second. And when Marcus finally got in his car and drove away, I stayed there, watching Diane's house shaking with rage. That night, I did something I'm not proud of. I waited until Marcus was asleep, and then I took his phone into the bathroom and went through it again. This time I went deeper. I found a folder of photos he'd hidden, pictures of him and Diane together, on trips I didn't know about, in places I'd never been. I found emails between them and a lawyer discussing asset protection and financial planning. I found a draft divorce petition that Marcus had never filed, dated 3 weeks ago. And then I found a voice memo, recorded just 5 days before the phone call. I played it, my hand over my mouth to keep from screaming. It was Marcus and Diane talking. Planning. "We can't just leave," Diane's voice said. "She'll take everything. The house, the kids, your retirement. You'll be broke." "I know," Marcus said. "That's why we have to be smart about this." "So what do we do?" "We make her look unstable," Marcus said. His voice was cold, clinical, like he was talking about a business deal. "We document everything. Her mood swings, her paranoia. We make it look like she's losing it. And then, when I file, we have leverage." "And if that doesn't work?" Diane asked. There was a long pause, and then Marcus said, "We'll figure it out." I listened to that recording 3 times, and each time, I felt something inside me harden. Something that used to be soft and trusting and full of hope. They wanted to make me look crazy. They wanted to gaslight me, manipulate me, take everything I'd worked for, and leave me with nothing. But I wasn't going to let that happen. I saved the recording. I backed it up. And then I started planning my revenge. Because they didn't know it yet, but they just made the biggest mistake of their lives. I spent the next 3 days preparing. I didn't sleep much. I barely ate. But I was focused in a way I'd never been before. Every move was calculated. Every decision was deliberate. Because I knew I only had one shot at this, and I couldn't afford to mess it up. First, I called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, the best divorce attorney in Charlotte, a woman named Patricia Holloway who had a reputation for being ruthless and brilliant. I sat in her office, and I showed her everything. The bank statements, the credit card bills, the text messages, the photos, the voice memo. She listened without interrupting, her expression unreadable, and when I finished, she leaned back in her chair and smiled. "You've done your homework," she said. "This is one of the most well-documented cases of infidelity and financial misconduct I've seen in years. He doesn't stand a chance." "Good," I said, "because I want everything." Patricia nodded. "We'll file for divorce on grounds of adultery. We'll go after the assets he tried to hide, the money he withdrew, everything. And with this voice memo, we can argue that he was planning to defraud you in the divorce proceedings, which is illegal. He could face serious consequences." "What about Diane?" I asked. Patricia's smile widened. "North Carolina is one of the few states that still allows for alienation of affection lawsuits. If we can prove she knowingly interfered with your marriage, we can sue her for damages. And based on what you've shown me, we have a very strong case." I left her office feeling lighter than I had in days. For the first time since I'd picked up that phone call, I felt like I had control again. But I wasn't done. That Friday, when Marcus left for his conference in Atlanta, I knew he was really going to meet Diane. I checked his calendar, cross-referenced it with Diane's social media, and confirmed that she told Ava she was going on a girls' trip the same weekend. They thought they were so clever. They thought they'd cover their tracks. But I was 3 steps ahead. I hired a private investigator, a retired police detective named Tom Briggs who specialized in infidelity cases. I gave him all the information I had, and I told him to follow them, to document everything. Every hotel they checked into, every meal they shared, every moment they spent together. I wanted irrefutable proof that would hold up in court. And then I did something that surprised even me. I called Diane's ex-husband, Rick. Rick and I had never been close. He was loud and arrogant, and I'd never really liked him, even before the divorce. But I knew one thing about Rick. He hated Diane. And he hated the idea of her being happy with someone else even more. "Lauren," he said when he answered. "What's going on?" "I need to talk to you," I said. "About Diane." We met at a coffee shop the next day. I told him everything. And when I showed him the proof, the messages, the photos, the plans, his face went red with rage. "That bitch," he muttered. "She always said she'd never date again. That she was focusing on Ava. And the whole time, she was screwing your husband." "Looks like it," I said. Rick leaned back in his chair, shaking his head. "What do you want from me?" "Information," I said. "Diane filed for full custody of Ava during your divorce. She claimed you were an unfit parent. But you fought it, didn't you?" "Damn right I did," Rick said. "She lied, made up stories about me being neglectful, about me having a drinking problem. None of it was true. But she had this whole sob story about being a single mom trying to rebuild her life, and the judge bought it." "Do you have any proof that she lied?" I asked. Rick smiled. "I have emails, texts, voicemails, all of it. I kept everything, just in case I ever needed it. Can I have copies?" I asked. He didn't even hesitate. "Absolutely." By the time Marcus came home Sunday night, I had everything I needed. Tom, the private investigator, had sent me a full report with photos and video footage of Marcus and Diane together in Atlanta. Rick had given me a file full of evidence that Diane had lied during her custody battle. And Patricia had drafted the divorce papers and the alienation of affection lawsuit. I was ready. Marcus walked in the door around 8 o'clock, looking tired but happy. He kissed me on the cheek and asked what I'd done all weekend. "Not much," I said. "Just caught up on some things." He went upstairs to shower, and I sat on the couch, my heart pounding. This was it, the moment I'd been planning for. And I wasn't going to back down. When he came back downstairs, I was waiting for him. I'd laid everything out on the coffee table. The bank statements, the photos, the messages, the voice memo transcript, and on top of it all, the divorce papers. Marcus froze when he saw it. His face went pale. "Lauren," he said slowly, What is this? Sit down, I said. He didn't move. Lauren, I can explain. Sit down. He sat, and I started talking. I told him everything I knew. About Diane. About the money. About the plans to make me look unstable. About the voice memo. I watched his face as I spoke, watched the color drain from it, watched the panic set in. Lauren, please, he said when I finished. It's not what you think. We never meant. Let's get rid of her tonight, I said, cutting him off. That's what Diane said when she called your phone. What did that mean, Marcus? Were you planning to kill me? Divorce me? Destroy me? No, he said quickly. God, no. It wasn't like that. She just meant, she wanted me to tell you. To end the marriage. That's all. That's all. I repeated. You've been lying to me for 8 months. You've been stealing money from our accounts. You've been planning to gaslight me into looking unstable so you could take everything in the divorce. And you're telling me that's all? Marcus put his head in his hands. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I felt trapped. I felt like we were just going through the motions, and then I met Diane, and she made me feel alive again, and you decided I was disposable, I said. He didn't answer. I picked up the divorce papers and handed them to him. Sign these. Lauren, can't we? Sign them, I said, or I'll make this so much worse. I have everything, Marcus. Every text, every photo, every lie, and I will use it. I will take you to court, and I will destroy you. Your reputation, your career, your relationship with our kids, everything. So sign the papers and walk away, or I will burn your entire life to the ground. He signed them. His hands were shaking, but he signed them. And then I told him to leave. That was 6 months ago. The divorce was finalized in April. Marcus lost almost everything. The house, his retirement, a significant portion of his income in alimony and child support. Patricia was as good as her word. We went after every penny he'd hidden, every lie he'd told, and the judge was not sympathetic. Diane lost more. The alienation of affection lawsuit cost her $250,000 in damages. Her interior design business collapsed when word got out about the affair. And when Rick used the evidence I'd given him to reopen his custody case, Ava chose to live with him. Diane went from having everything to having nothing, all because she thought she could take what wasn't hers. As for me, I'm still here. I'm still standing. Sophie lives with me full-time, and she's doing well, all things considered. Ethan calls every week. I sold the house. I couldn't stay there after everything that happened, and I bought a smaller place closer to the city. I'm dating again, slowly, carefully. I'm learning to trust again. But I'll never forget the sound of Diane's voice on that phone call. The way she whispered, so casually, about getting rid of me. Like I was nothing. Like I didn't matter. She was wrong. And if there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that you can't let people erase you. You can't let them rewrite your story. You have to fight. You have to stand up. Even when it's terrifying. Even when it feels impossible. Because you are not disposable. You are not nothing. And anyone who tries to make you believe otherwise deserves exactly what they get. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever had to fight for yourself when no one else would, please share this video. Let other people know they're not alone. And check the description box below for more stories like this. Stories about survival, about revenge, about women who refuse to be victims. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And thank you for reminding me that I was never alone in this fight.